On the eve of Christmas, a little girl went to her room and mysteriously disappeared into the night. This incident immediately caught the attention of the public, and the search operation involved more than 3,000 people. Meanwhile, detectives discovered several astonishing details that ultimately helped them solve this high-profile case. Sarah Foxwell was born on May 18, 1998, in Salisbury, Maryland, USA, and grew up in a large family with 2 sisters and 4 brothers. Additionally, her mother had 3 more children from a previous marriage. Sarah's parents eventually separated, leaving her mother in a difficult position as she faced the challenge of caring for and providing for all the children alone, which meant she had to work extensively. As a result, the children often lived with relatives. Sarah was not only the middle daughter by age, but also the most cheerful child in the family, always trying to mediate her siblings' quarrels, and she was often successful. In December 2009, when Sarah turned 11, she temporarily moved to live with her aunt, grandmother, and grandfather, as her mother took on extra shifts at work in anticipation of Christmas, hoping to buy gifts for each of the children. Sarah's aunt lived on the outskirts of Salisbury in a spacious farmhouse that was appealing to the children. The house was located on a large plot of land, providing them with virtually unlimited entertainment opportunities. December 22nd was a fairly ordinary day, with only 3 days left until Christmas, and the children were in a jubilant mood, running around and having fun at the house. Pizza was ordered for dinner, and by 9 in the evening, they were getting ready for bed. Sarah shared a room with Emma, her 6-year-old sister, who was at the far end of the hallway next to the back door. After a short conversation, they fell asleep. The next morning, Sarah's grandfather woke up first and went to wake the children. Upon entering Sarah and Emma's room, he found only the younger girl. Thinking Sarah had already woken up, he began to search for her throughout the house but could not find her. After informing her aunt, they began searching every nook and cranny together. Realizing Sarah was not in the house, the aunt speculated that she might have gone outside to play in the freshly fallen snow. However, it quickly became clear that Sarah's shoes and jacket were still at home. The aunt's attention was drawn to Sarah's toothbrush, which was missing from its usual place in the bathroom. After inspecting the surrounding area and not finding the girl, the aunt decided to contact Sarah's mother, who arrived immediately, and they sought help from the police. The police responded promptly to the call and began a detailed inspection of Sarah's aunt's home. She shared that she had a habit of thoroughly checking every night before bed that all doors and windows were locked. She had done so again the previous evening. However, despite a thorough search, no traces of Sarah were found. Given the disappearance of her toothbrush, the authorities immediately suspected abduction as one of the main theories of the incident, and soon stumbled upon additional confirmation of this theory. The police decided to double-check that all exits from the house were indeed securely locked. On approaching the back door, next to where Sarah's room was located, it turned out that the door opened easily when tried. Her aunt claimed that the door had been locked the evening before and had not been opened since. However, she suddenly remembered there was a spare key near the door from the street. Urgently checking its usual place, she was horrified to find it missing, which further strengthened the kidnapping theory, suggesting that the intruder was aware of the key's location and probably had close ties to the family. This hunch was further supported by the fact that on the night of Sarah's disappearance, the family dog, which usually barks loudly at strangers, remained quiet, making no alarm noises. Reacting to the information received, the investigative team immediately organized an extensive search effort. Word of Sarah's disappearance quickly spread to the surrounding neighborhoods, prompting a massive response from citizens willing to support the search effort. The sheriff enlisted the help of the media, encouraging everyone to check their neighborhoods for finds that could indicate evidence of a crime. Dozens of police officers were involved, not only from the local department, but officers from neighboring communities and even other states joined the operation. The key objective was to find Sarah alive. Given that the girl's toothbrush had been taken, there was speculation that the kidnapper might have kept her in some sort of hiding place. This stimulated police teams to mobilize all resources in the search. The first important trace was found right outside the house: fresh car tire tracks in the snow, presumably belonging to the kidnapper's vehicle. Given that all of Sarah's warm clothes had been left at home, It was obvious that the intruder could not have taken her away on foot. During the investigation, Sarah's relatives were taken to the police station where an unexpected discovery was made. Sarah's 6-year-old sister, who shared a room with her, secretly informed her grandmother of the secret. She had seen the man who had taken Sarah away. According to the little girl, she was awakened by the man's conversations with her sister. Not understanding what was happening and gripped by fear, the girl decided to pretend to be asleep. A while later, she noticed the man leaving the room with Sarah. This story shocked her relatives, but what happened next was even more shocking. Emma said she recognized the man. He turned out to be Mr. Tommy. The adults immediately realized who they were talking about. It was 30-year-old Thomas Lex, Aunt Sarah's ex-boyfriend. They'd broken up a few months ago, but until then the man had spent time at her house and all the kids knew him well. But the police knew Thomas even better, as he had an impressive criminal history. Over the years, he had come to their attention for crimes involving the abuse of women and girls. He first went behind bars at the age of 18, then Thomas abused a 12-year-old girl and received 4 years in prison. However, he was soon released early. Later, the man was sentenced to 7 years in prison for abusing another minor. However, for some reason, he was again released early after only 6 months for good behavior, and he was free. Shortly thereafter, he received another 6 months for abusing another girl. He also attempted to assault another girl on the very day his wife came home with his newborn daughter from the hospital. That wife later divorced him and obtained a restraining order against him because he had threatened to kill her and their daughter. Another incident occurred after a woman and her young daughter moved into the same street with him. The girl and her friend were sitting on the porch of her house, and at one point Thomas approached them. He told one of them that he had been watching her play in the yard and called her wild. He then grabbed a branch and started hitting her on her buttocks. The girl ran home and told her mom what had happened. The woman spotted Thomas through the window and realized she had already seen his face before she moved. She went to the rapist registry, registered in her new neighborhood, and Thomas's picture was there. The mother contacted the police and the case went to court. However, Thomas managed to get away with it. Before the trial began, the wife was asked not to mention the fact that Thomas was on the rapist register and had a previous conviction for abuse. This request was due to concerns that such disclosures could bias the court and, as a result, lead to Thomas being wrongly convicted. A few months before Sarah disappeared, Thomas was again the focus of law enforcement attention. He broke into the 24-year-old woman's bedroom at night, stripped, and began masturbating next to her bed. He was arrested, but after posting bail, he was released pending trial. Thomas was able to hide his criminal past acts from his Aunt Sarah. But when she did find out about them, he convinced her that all the charges against him were false and that he was in fact innocent of the crimes he was accused of. All these facts left detectives in no doubt that Thomas was the one involved in Sarah's abduction. Her relatives also noted that Thomas had shown an unusually heightened attention to Sarah during the period of his relationship with her aunt, which in light of subsequent events took on disturbing contours. Officers quickly went to Thomas's residence to interview him. He was residing nearby in a shed on his parents' property. After the interview, investigators were given permission to search the premises, where they found chaos and highly unsuitable living conditions, but no evidence linking it to Sarah's disappearance could be found. A large number of pornographic magazines and DVDs were found in the shed. During questioning, Thomas immediately began to deny any connection to the girl's disappearance, claiming he was trying to fight his tendencies to commit crimes against young girls. He stated that when he was in a relationship with Sarah's aunt, he consciously avoided being alone with the children to avoid any unfounded accusations. After mentioning that Emma had seen him the night she disappeared, Thomas stated that this was not the first time the girl had spread far-fetched stories. The investigators didn't believe a word Thomas said, and their doubts were reinforced by his inappropriate behavior. While talking about 11-year-old Sarah's disappearance, he was constantly smiling and laughing. The sheriff suspected that Thomas thought his crime was perfect and was confident that the police would not be able to prove his guilt. Nevertheless, Thomas claimed to have an alibi for the time of the girl's disappearance, stating that he had spent that night at a bar with a friend until late at night. Law enforcement officers immediately began verifying the alibi Thomas provided, and to their surprise, it was confirmed. Thomas had indeed been spotted at the bar. However, a problem arose. He left the establishment around 1 in the morning, and his whereabouts remained unknown until 7 in the morning, even to his family. Analysis of his mobile phone revealed that night, Thomas sent messages to several acquaintances, women, suggesting a meetup, but none agreed. Despite the detectives' efforts, they could not get Thomas to confess. Driven by the hope of finding the girl alive, investigators directed all resources to the search, during which the suspect's pickup truck was examined. Inside the vehicle, key evidence was found. Sarah's green toothbrush and a large lollipop, suggesting Thomas used the candy as a means to lure the girl into the vehicle. Furthermore, the tire tracks from the pickup perfectly matched the tracks in the snow outside Sarah's home on the night of her disappearance. Thomas claimed to the detectives that he had not visited that house for over a month, which only confirmed his deceit. In light of the suspect's continued denials, law enforcement decided to search for Sarah independently. Hundreds of officers and volunteers participated in the search, covering an extensive area around the girl's residence. Abandoned buildings, forested areas, ravines, and bodies of water were checked, and canine units along with service dogs tried to pick up the missing girl's trail. From the air, helicopters combed the area from the start of the search operation. The initiative garnered massive support among the citizens, who flocked to the police station to sign up as volunteers, despite the inclement weather and the onset of the holiday season. Unfortunately, the first day's search did not end in success, but the teams were not deterred and resumed their efforts with the first rays of the morning sun the next day. Throughout, the number of responsive citizens only grew, eventually involving up to 3,000 people. The sheriff even had to organize a headquarters based at a large baseball stadium, since the police department could not accommodate such a large number of participants. Interestingly, among the volunteers were both adults and children who distributed water, hot tea, and food to all participants. Everyone was eager to contribute, hoping their joint efforts would help find Sarah alive. Meanwhile, the investigation obtained its first key evidence directly linking Thomas to the girl's disappearance. After Thomas was brought to the police station, he was given a new set of clothes, and his personal items were sent for analysis in the laboratory. Experts found foreign DNA on the suspect's underwear and compared it to a sample taken from Sarah's personal items. The analysis showed a complete match of DNA, leading detectives to the grim conclusion that Thomas likely assaulted the girl. The second day of the search did not yield the desired results, and on Christmas morning, December 25th, thousands of people again gathered on the streets, not letting the holiday distract them from their mission. That same day, investigators received information about the last location of Thomas's phone, which had been pinged by several cell towers on the night of Sarah's disappearance, determining the approximate area of his presence. The area, almost on the state border and 14 kilometers from Sarah's aunt's home, was covered with dense forest and a network of narrow paths. Hundreds of volunteers carefully searched every corner, hoping for a Christmas miracle and that Sarah would be found alive. However, by evening, at about 4 o'clock, a police team found the girl's body on the ground, almost at the very edge of the state, a bitter reality against all hope. She was lying on her back, and her hands were twisted in such a way that they remained raised upwards, pointing towards the sky. When medical experts began to examine the body, they were in for an indescribable shock. Firstly, they confirmed that the girl had been subjected to violence. Secondly, they found traces of strangulation, but determined that the perpetrator had failed to kill her in this way. In the victim's lungs, experts discovered mud and concluded that she had been attempted to be drowned in a puddle. Apparently, at this time, the victim lost consciousness. After that, she received severe burns. According to investigators, the criminal left her lying in that forest for a while, went to get a canister of gasoline, and set the shack on fire. Traces of smoke were found in her lungs, indicating that at that moment, she was still alive. This also explained why the deceased's hands were raised and directed towards the sky, something that sometimes occurs when a person is exposed to fire. Such extreme cruelty shocked all participants in the case. Even detectives found it hard to believe that the girl had indeed been subjected to all these atrocities. However, now that they knew what had happened to Sarah, everyone wanted only one thing: to achieve the death penalty for Thomas. Although Thomas continued to deny his involvement in the crime, the evidence against him was overwhelming, especially after the discovery of the body. A thorough examination of his vehicle revealed Sarah's hair and fragments of her pajama fabric on the front seat, further confirming his involvement in her disappearance. Given all the evidence collected, Thomas's chances of acquittal seem minimal. The trial preparation took over a year, but it never reached its commencement. In early 2011, the prosecution offered Thomas a plea deal, whereby he would plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole, thus avoiding the death penalty. Despite the gravity of his crime against Sarah, there were compelling reasons for this decision. One reason for the deal was that Sarah's younger sister would have had to repeatedly go through the traumatic process of testifying in front of her sister's killer, which could have inflicted further psychological harm on her. Additionally, there was a risk that if Thomas's defense could convince the court of the need for a lighter sentence, he might have been eligible for parole in the future. The terms of the deal eliminated such a possibility, ensuring that Thomas would never be released. Furthermore, the process was influenced by the state governor's opposition to the death penalty, which further reduced the likelihood of such an outcome for Thomas. As a result, he accepted the deal's terms and shared information with the detectives that they had already surmised. Thomas admitted that he had tricked the girl into leaving her home, then took her to a secluded location where he assaulted and killed her. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole and was sent to a maximum security prison. In the first days of his incarceration, he was attacked by another inmate who inflicted several serious wounds on him with a makeshift weapon during lunch. Nevertheless, Thomas survived, and the prison administration increased measures to protect him from other inmates seeking retribution. Sarah's case caused public outcry and indignation due to systemic failures that allowed Thomas to be released and continue committing crimes. In response, Maryland introduced the so-called Sarah's Law, according to which individuals convicted of sexual crimes against children are subjected to a minimum sentence of 15 years before the possibility of parole consideration can be evaluated.